Start recording also? Okay, good morning, everybody. Talmud Torah is sponsored by Avram and Shandi Kelman in memory of our parents and in recognition of the hard work of Rabbi Silver. Our Rav encourages our community and the internet listeners to learn Torah and Midas in his own special effective style. May you go from strength to strength until 120. Kaddish Day is sponsored by for Dina Frady Bas Herschel Leib Halevi, mother of Harold Levin. Okay, we are in the middle of Mem Amud Aleph, about 10 lines down. Just to give a brief summary of what we were talking about, the Mishnah yesterday said that if a person is buying his dalad minim during the year of Shemitah, so the Mishnah said that there's going to be a problem to pay normally for the esrog, because the person who's selling it to you, we're talking about, is not familiar with all the laws of Shvius, of Shemitah, and therefore if I give him money, really the way it works is that the money, he goes and he takes some peirush Shvius, some fruits of Shvius from the field. He picks an esrog off a tree and he's going to sell it to me. If I go and I give him $50 for the esrog, so that money which I gave him is really going to have kedusha Shvius, going to have to be kept with the laws of Shvius, and he might not know, and therefore he might keep it around too long, and because of me giving him the money, I'm causing him to do a problem of not spending the money in the proper time with kedusha Shvius. So that's what the Mishnah says. If you buy a lulav from a person who doesn't know during the Shemitah year, you have to avoid paying for the esrog. So the Mishnah said that basically ask him to give you the esrog for free, and you'll pay for the other dalad minim. And the Gemara yesterday talked about if he's not willing to give it to you for free, so how do you do it? So you bump up the price of the lulav so that he's not losing money, but you can't pay for the esrog, because if you pay for the esrog has kedusha shvius, which means it has the laws of shvius on it, and if you pay for that, so then the money I'm giving him, I'm setting up a situation where this person who doesn't know better is going to have all this money of shvius, which he needs to spend by a certain time, and he's not going to. So because of me, I'm causing him to do something wrong. But it was clear from the Mishnah that the only thing we were focusing on was the esrog. We were not focusing on the lulav. Okay, so the Gemara yesterday really asked that question, and the Gemara clarified that there's a difference between lulav and esrog. That by lulav, the halacha is dependent on when it finished growing, and since it finished in the 6th year, it got to chanata, that level of production, of growth, in the 6th year before they picked it in the 7th year. Therefore, it did not have the laws of shvius relevant to it, as opposed to the esrog, which is dependent on the picking, which happened right before he went to sell it. So therefore, since he picked it in the Shemitah year, that's why the Mishnah was concerned about the esrog and not concerned about the lulav. Okay, so about 10 lines down on Mem Amud Aleph. Time with the lulav bar shishas hanichlas l'shviusu. The reason you explained why this person who went and picked and cut lulavim off the tree, and he's selling it, the reason that there's no kedusha shvius, there's no laws of shvius relevant to the lulav, you said, is because it really finished growing in the 6th year. Hashvius kadosh, but it sounded like from the way you were talking that really trees, right? Lulav is a piece of a tree, but really trees are relevant to the laws of Shemitah. Just you said this lulav we're not concerned with because it happened to be that since Succah is at the beginning of the year, so that means if it was already finished, because they were ready to cut it down Succah's time, that means it really finished growing. It got to chanata much earlier in the 6th year. But it sounded like a tree which grew in the 7th year is relevant to the laws of Shvius. Ask the Gemara, Amai, Eitzim ba'almahu, the Eitzim ein behem mishum kedusha Shvius. But if it's just branches, it's just a tree, so then we learned in the following brisa that there's no laws of shvius relevant to a tree, the Tanya, because the brisa said the following: Alei kanim alei kfanim is the branches of different types of tree, like a grapevine. Rashi translates that means that a person brought into like a storage place. Laktan lachila, if the person picked these branches to eat, to feed his animal, yesh b'hem mishum kedusha shvius, then they are relevant to the halachas of shvius because he's picking them as a food for his animal. Laktan la'etzim, but if a person went out in the field and gathered some wood and put it in a storage house as firewood, ein b'hem mishum kedusha shvius, then there's no law of shvius on them. So the Bryce is saying explicitly that a person who picked a wood to use it as firewood, there's no law, there's no relevance of the laws of Shemitah on that type of item. So what the Gemara is asking is, why did you have to get so complicated? When I asked that why aren't you concerned with the person who's selling the lulav, it should be the same issue. That if you pay for the lulav with your money, and since the lulav has the status of shvius, you're giving him money, so now the money will have the status of Shemitah. And the Gemara answered, really, you're right, just it happens to be the case is that the lulav finished in the 6th year and therefore doesn't have the laws of Shemitah on it. Challenges the Gemara, that's not true. Even if it grew in the 7th year, we see in the Brisa that when it comes to trees, there's no Kedusha Shvius on trees. So why did you have to answer that it got to Chanata, got to that certain level of growth in the 6th year? Even if it grew in the 7th year, it would be the same, it would also be okay. My answer is no. Shiny hasam damar kra lachem la'achla. The pasuk when describing the parsha of Shemitah uses the word lachem, which means for you, la'achla, to eat it. So the Gemara explains lachem dumya de la'achla, that it's used for you similar to eating, meaning misha hanaso ubiuru shave yatu eitzim shahanasan achar biurin. So it needs to be hanasan ubiuran shave, which means the person's benefit and the destruction of the item come at the same time, to the exclusion of eitzim, of wood, that the hana, the person's benefit, comes after it's destroyed. So Rashi explains we're really doing two things at the same time here. There's one halacha in the use, something which has kedusha shvius, something which has the laws of shvius relevant to it. There's a rule in how you use it. You have to use that thing in a way that the hana, that the benefit and the destruction of the item come at the same time, like eating. When a person eats, the food becomes destroyed as the person is tasting the food. That's called the same time. There's a second thing we're learning out, which is the types of items which are included in the laws of shvius is defined by an item which generally is used that the benefit and the destruction come at the same time. In other words, one halacha is something which has kedusha shvius. How do I use it? There's a restriction. You can only use it in a way that the benefit and the destruction come at the same time. There's a second halacha we're learning out, which is the types of items which even have kedusha shvius is the type of item which its general use is in a way that the benefit and the destruction of it come at the same time. So meaning, our Gemara was asking that why are you telling me that it sounded like from your conversation before that trees are relevant to the laws of Shemitah, challenged the Gemara, but we saw in the Brisa that if a person picked firewood, then there's no laws of shvius. So the Gemara is answering, well, really it depends. That the definition of which types of things are included in kedusha shvius and having the laws of shvius depends. What does it depend on? The type of item with general use is in a way that its destruction and its benefit to the person come at the exact same time. So therefore, when it comes to firewood, Rashi explains, where the main use is after the wood gets burned up and it's hot. Then you go and cook on it. Like once it's coals, So that's called the hana, the benefit of the person comes after the destruction of the item. And that's why the Brisa said picking wood for firewood does not have Kedusha Shvius, because the person's benefit comes at a later time after its destruction. As opposed to by lulav, Rashi explains, is that by lulav, the main use of a lulav was to use it as a broom. So when a person cuts down a lulav from a tree, its main purpose in those times was to use it to sweep. And since if you use that type of tree to sweep, so the hana, the benefit I get, which is my house being clean, comes at the same time that the leaves are getting all messed up. So that's called hanasan ubiurin shava. The benefit and the destruction come at the same time. So the Gemara's answer is, it really depends. A lulav, which its use is something which comes at the same time, has kedusha shvius, has the laws of shvius. The brisa, which talked about firewood, is an exception because the use which it's made for is the type of use where the benefit and the destruction don't come at the same time. Challenges the Gemara, if you have types of trees which a person would use as some type of torch, so if he uses it for that purpose, so then the benefit and the destruction come at the same time. Rava answers, you're right, but the general use of wood is to make a fire, to make it into coals, to then to cook. So the fact that some people use it in a way that the benefit and the destruction come at the same time, we're not going to deal with. We deal with what's the general use of the item. And the Gemara says, Succah tanohi. Sorry, the eitim la Succah tanohi. And this, what we've been discussing, is really a disagreement in the Tanoim. Let's see. The Tanya, ein mosen perish shvius lo lemishra v'lo lekvusa. The first opinion says that if you have fruits which have the laws of shvius relevant to them, you're not allowed to use it as a mishra. Mishra is to take your grapes and make it into wine in order to soak your flax. I guess it was productive it was helpful in the production of the flax. V'lo lekvusa, and you can't use it for laundry. I'm guessing it was some way to get out the stains in clothes. So the first opinion says you can't use Perish Shvius to soak your flax or to clean your clothes. So why not? Rashi explains, because what's the benefit a person gets from washing his clothes? The benefit comes when he wears the clean clothes. So I'm using the Perish Shvius while I do my laundry or while I soak my flax. And when I'm finished that process and I wear it, that's my benefit. So the destruction of the fruits happens while I'm doing the laundry or soaking the flax. The benefit comes later. So that's like the opinion we were just describing, that when you have something which has Kedusha Shvius, you cannot do a use where the benefit comes at a later time than the actual destruction of the fruit. That's the first opinion. Rabbi Yossi Amar Moshe. Rabbi Yossi held that even though it comes at two different times, it's still okay. So my time with Tanakama, what's the reason for the first opinion? So he says the pasuk says that you need to eat the fruits, meaning eating is the type of benefit which the benefit and the destruction come at the same time, to the exclusion of these types of things, soaking it to make flax or to clean your clothes, where the benefit only comes at a later point in time. My time with the Rabbi Yossi that said it's okay. He says the pasuk says it should be for you. Lachem l'kol tzarcheichem. You should do it however you want. Vafilu l'mishra l'kvusa. Says Rabbi Yossi, it sounds to me like you can even do the type of thing where the benefit only comes at a later point in time. So Tanakam haksiv lachem. As the Gemara, they both have to deal with each other's pasuk. So the Tanakama said his source is, it said it needs to be like eating. Ask the Gemara, but it also says it should be lachem, which would sound like you can do more with it. He understood the lachem is similar to eating. In other words, the Tanakama is saying that lachem is defined by the achila. In other words, achila would have sounded like you have to eat it. Lachem is defining that just like eating is the type of action where the benefit and the destruction come at the same time, so lachem is saying you can use your perush shvius for any use where the destruction and the benefit come at the same time. Okay, so meaning that's one opinion, which is what we were assuming before, that the definition of what I'm allowed to use my perush shvius for is an action where the benefit and the destruction come at the same time. Okay, what about the other opinion, Rabbi Yossi, who allowed even using it to soak your clothes where the benefit only comes at a later point in time? Rabbi Yossi aksiv la'achlo. How can Rabbi Yossi say it's okay? The pasuk also says use it to eat it. He understood that that's coming to exclude a different case. So in other words, Rabbi Yossi held lachem, which means you can use it for you, included even types of benefits, even types of actions where the benefit only comes later. And the fact that the pasuk said use it to eat it, which would sound like a limitation of my rights, is coming to say that you're not allowed to use it l'refuah, to use it as medicine. Okay, like we learned in a brisa, which is Rabbi Yossi, that a person can use his perush shvius to eat it, but he can't use it as to make medicine out of it. Ask the brisa, how do you know to exclude making medicine? Maybe it's coming to exclude using it for the laundry, where the benefit only comes later. No, keshuhu omer lachem harei lekvusa omer. No, Rabbi Yossi says that when the pasuk said it's for you, I think that included you can even use it for the type of action like laundry where the benefit only comes later. Hamani makayim la'achla. So then what do I do with the word la'achla, which is a limitation of the person's rights in the use of the perush shvius? So he understands la'achla v'lo melugma. It's coming to exclude that a person can't use the fruits to make medicine. Ma ro'is l'rabos es hakvusa. Challenges the Gemara. How did you know which thing to include and which thing to exclude? Why was it more logical to Rabbi Yossi to say you're allowed to use the perush shvius to soak your clothes to wear later, but you're not allowed to use it to make medicine? Top of Amud Beis. Mar b'anias hakvusa sheshave b'kol adam. So Rabbi Yossi explains it was more logical to me to allow the person to do laundry, because that's shava b'chol adam. That's something that everybody needs. Emotzias hamalugma she'eno shava b'chol adam. And I would rather exclude using it for medicine, which is something which is not necessary for all people. Okay, so just to summarize what we just did, meaning in this brisa, I would say there's two words in the pasuk which describe how a person can use his fruits of shvius. One says lachem, which would sound like it's a very broad, person can do with it as he feels. The other pasuk says la'achla, that a person needs to eat it, which would sound like it's limiting the person's rights. So the one opinion, which is the Tanna Kamma's understanding, that the two, they're really both agreeing that it has to be something in the middle because of the two different words. But Tanna Kamma's middle opinion is that the definition needs to be the type of action where the destruction of the item comes at the exact same time as the benefit to the person. So therefore, just like eating is something where as the fruit gets destroyed, the person benefits from the eating, so to any action which is like that is okay, to the exclusion, for example, of using it as to clean your clothes, where the benefit only comes at a later point in time. Rabbi Yossi is a little broader in what he allows you to use your perush shvius. He allowed even an action where the benefit only comes later, and he only excluded what the Gemara just clarified is things which are eino shava b'chol adam, things which are not necessary for all people. So that's how he dealt with the pasuk, which sounds like it's limiting my rights of what to do with the perush shvius, is coming to exclude actions which are not necessary for all people. For example, using it for medicine, that Rabbi Yossi agrees is going to be a problem. Okay, 2 lines down on Amud Beis. Man Tana, lahad Tana Rabbana. Who's the Tana of the following brisa? The brisa says, la'achla, person can use his fruits of shvius to eat it, v'lo l'melugma, but he cannot use it for medicine. La'achla, he can use it to eat it, v'lo l'zilaf, but not to use it to sprinkle to sprinkle around his house to make the house smell good. La'achla, person can use it to eat it. V'lolas is mimenu, mimena apiktavisin. Rashi explains that apiktavisin is an acronym for a person who ate extra to make himself throw up. Okay, so there's 3 examples in the Brisa of what a person's not allowed to do. He's allowed to eat it to the exclusion of using it as medicine, using it to sprinkle his house to make his house smell extra good, and to use it if a person ate extra to make himself throw up the extra food. So who's the Brisa who said those are the 3 things you can't do? Kaman ki Reb Yossi. Says the Gemara, that's like Reb Yossi's opinion. Di Rabbanon ha'ikanami mishra v'kvusa. Because according to the Rabbanon's opinion, the Brisa should have included more restrictions that I can't do, because the Rabbanon restricted even an action like soaking and using it as laundry, because those are actions where the benefit only comes at a later point in time after the destruction of the item. So if the Brisa sounds like it only excluded the 3 cases it excluded, it sounds like Mishra v'Kvusa. Those 2 cases would really be okay, and that's how we know it's the opinion of Reb Yossi and not the opinion of the Rabbanon. Okay. Amr Rebbe Elazar, Ein shvias mischalelas ela derech mekach. Says Rebbe Elazar that if a person has Perush shvias in front of him, he has fruits which have kedusha shvias, okay, and he wants to, let's just give a short introduction, right? If a person has something which belongs to the Beis HaMikdash, hektish, okay, so there's a method of being podeh. So over there, being podeh, it means I want to transfer the kedusha which is on this, and I want to transfer it to a different item. Okay, you have the same conversation, let's say, by Meiser Sheni. Right? A person has fruits he wants to bring to Yerushalayim. There's a mitzvah to bring to Yerushalayim. It's too heavy. So you can be poded onto a coin. And the Kedusha comes off of this and goes onto the coin. We're going to see by Shvius, there's an interesting halacha that you can be poded, which means the Kedusha, the laws are going to apply to the second item, but the laws don't come off the first item. Normally, the way pigeon works is it's an exchange. This thing has certain halachas, restrictions, and being podeh, it means I'm transferring it from this and putting it here. We're going to see later that by Shvius, that's not how it works. By Shvius, you have the ability to make the second thing also, but it's not going to take the laws off the first thing. Okay, so Rebbe Elazar says, how would a person, meaning you can't use the word exchange, you have to say the words, how could a person make the chilul, which means really add kedusha to the second item also? So Rebbe Elazar says the only way that works by shvius is derech mekach, which means if a person takes the fruits of shvius and sells it, and the person buys it, so somebody comes to me with his fruits that he took from the field, and I pay him for it, says Rebbe Elazar, that money that I paid him for his fruits of shvius is also going to become like shvius, that now the owner who has my money is going to be restricted by the laws of shvius with that money. The Rebbe Elazar is saying if a person would just try himself, I go and pick up a fruit of shvius, and I say, I want the fruits of shvius to go into this coin, it's not going to work. Rebbe Elazar is saying the only way it works is if it's done in the way of a transaction. We'll see where he's coming from. Rabbi Yochanan Omar, Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. He says, Bein derech mekach, bein derech chilul. Whether somebody came to me with his fruits and I paid him in the form of a sale, or the person himself took a fruit and said, this shvius should be on this coin, in either way it's going to work. So they're having a disagreement. If a person tried to make it happen himself, does it actually work, or does it only work in the context of a sale? It says, my time is Rebbe Elazar. Where is Rebbe Elazar coming from that the only way it's going to work is in the form of a sale? In a pasuk which is describing Yovel, which has the same halachas as Shvius. And then it says, then the next parasha starts talking about a person who did a sale. Rebbe Elazar's understanding, if the Torah put those 2 parashas together, those 2 psukim together, it's to come to explain to you that the only way you can transfer the kedusha is in the form of mekach umemkar, which is what the pasuk's talking about. that's coming to exclude, you can't do it by yourself. The only way it's going to take effect is in the form of a sale. Rabbi Yochanan, my time. Rabbi Yochanan disagreed. Where is he coming from? T'chsiv ki yovel hi kodesh. The pasuk in describing yovel, which has the same halach as a shvius, describes it like kodshim, like things that belong to the Beis Hamikdash. Ma kodesh miderech mekach miderech chilul. Just like by kodshim, the halacha is that the transfer takes place, whether it's in the form of a sale or the person does it himself. These things which are kodesh should be on this coin. So av shvius miderech miderech chilul. If the pasuk connected the laws of shvius with kodshim, so Rabbi Yochanan's understanding that just like by kodshim it works in either way, so I'll learn from there that when it comes to shvius, the transfer can take place whether it's in the form of a sale or it's the person himself saying these fruits of shvius should be on this coin. So Rabbi Yochanan, who holds that it works either way, so how does he understand Rabbi Elazar's source, which was that the Torah connected the laws of shvius, and then the next pasuk started talking about sales. Rabbi Elazar understood it was saying only in the form of a sale can the transfer happen. No, Rabbi Yochanan will tell you the fact that the Torah put those two together is for Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina, to Tanya, because we learned in a brayso. Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina, bovrei kamakasha avka shel shvius v'chulei. Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina saying, come look how bad it is if a person benefits from shvius in the wrong way. Adam nosev v'nosin v'peirush shvius, that a person goes and does business with the fruits of shvius. Lasof mochers v'taltulav as kelav. It's going to end up, he's going to sell his stuff. In other words, he's going to lose his money and have to start selling his items. Shenem Rav Shnas hayavel azos tashuvu ish alachuzaso v'samach lechisim kurmem karlamisecha. Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina is saying he understood that the flow of the psukim is really like a ripple effect of not keeping the following mitzvah will cause the person to have financial loss and therefore have to start selling his items. So he's saying the reason the first pasuk talked about shvius and then the next pasuk started talking about sales is to tell you if you don't keep the laws of shvius, it's going to result in having to start doing some sales because the person's going to lose his money. So in other words, he's not learning the connection of the psukim is to limit which types of transfers happen. He's going to tell you the reason the psukim are together is just to tell you the stringency of keeping the laws of shvius, that if a person doesn't do that, it will affect his financial status and lead to him having to make sales. Rabbi Elazar, and Rabbi Elazar, what does he do with Rabbi Yochanan's source that the pasuk called the fruits of shvius like kodshim? Rabbi Yochanan understood that if it called it like kodshim, then just like kodshim, you can make the transfer whether in the form of a sale or the person himself. So Rabbi Yochanan learned from there, so too, when it comes to the fruits of shvius, it can be done either way. So Rabbi Elazar, who said that the only way to transfer the laws of shvius is in the form of a sale, what does he do with that source? The pasuk says the fruits of yovel, like shmita, has the same status of kodesh. Ma kodesh tofes es damav, af shvius tofes es damel. He learns it for the brayso, which is really the source that you can do such a transfer by shvius. Rabbi Yochanan was learning from there. It's telling you also how you can, which types of transfers work. Rabbi Elazar is going to tell you, no, that's the source, that there's a concept of pidyon, of transferring by shvius. Which types of transfers work, Rabbi Elazar is going to say, that's my other pasuk. That the one pasuk talked about shvius, and right after that talked about sales, which to me sounds like only sales, and the person cannot do it, cannot create the pidyon, the redemption himself. Tanya kavasi de Rabbi Elazar, Tanya kavasi de Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, we have one brayso like Rabbi Elazar, one brayso like Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so again, we have two opinions. Everyone agrees that if a person has peirush shvius, fruits which have the laws of shvius, there is a method of making a transfer. In other words, everybody agrees that if somebody comes to sell me fruits and I pay him for that, that the money is going to also get the status of kedusha shvius, which means the owner who now took my money, is going to have to be careful with that money to deal with it like the laws of Shvius. Their disagreement is, if a person goes out in the field, picks up some fruits of Shvius, and says, this Shvius should be on this, did anything work or did it not work? Okay, one source that it should work is that the pasuk compared it to kudshim. By kudshim, either in the form of a sale, or the person who says these kudshim should be on this, either method works. The source of the one who says it doesn't work is because after the pasuk discussed the laws of Shvius, the verse said, and a person's going to go sell. So he understood it's limiting the types of transfers that work, and the Gemara clarified what each one will do with the other one's source. Okay, now the Gemara says we have a brisa supporting the opinion of each of them. Tani Kabasi de Rebbe Lozer. So again, Rebbe Lozer's opinion was the only way it's going to work is if it's in the form of a sale. So let's see where we see that in the brisa. The brisa says, Shvias tofeses es dameh, shenemar kiyovali kodesh tielachem. That if a person makes a transfer with Shvias, it takes effect because the verse says it's just like kudshim. Ma kodesh tofeses damav v'aser. Af Shvias tofeses es dameh v'asur. Just like by kudshim, we know that there's a way to transfer the laws this item has onto a new item. So the Bryce is saying if the pasuk said Shvias is like kudshim, so we can learn from there that there's a way by Shvias also to make a transfer. So I ma kodesh tofes dama v'yotze lechulin. Well, by kudshim, the way it works is this item, which is kudshim, I say the kedusha should go in this item. And how does it work? The second item gets the status of being kodesh, and the first item is free. It loses its status. So if the whole source is from there, says the Gemara, so then just like by kudshim, the second item gets the status, and the first item's yotze l'chulun. The first item lost its status. In other words, it's a replacement. So af shvias tofeses es dameh v'yotzes l'chulun. So too by shvias, the way it should work is that the first item should lose its laws of Shvius, and the second item should be a replacement of the first. Now, Talmud Lomer Tihiyeh, Bavyasa Tehei, that the verse in the parasha of Shvius says Tihiyeh, which is coming to include that you can extend the laws of the first item to the second item, but the first item is going to retain its original status. HaKetzad, says the Rebbe, I'll explain to you in terms of a case. Lokach b'peirush shvius basar elu. Person took his peirush shvius and he went to the store and he bought some meat. Elu ve'elu misbarin b'shvius. Both of them have the laws of shvius relevant to them. That means the fruits which the owner now has, right? The butcher now has my fruits. So even though I paid with them, still they retain their status of shvius, and the meat that I bought also has a status of shvius. In other words, it's not an exchange that my fruits go free and the basar or the meat is a replacement. No, the fruits retain their status. So now he, the seller, has to make sure he keeps the laws of shvius with the fruits, and the basar which I bought also has the status of shvius. Lokach bebasar dagim. If then I go and exchange my meat for some fish, yatsa basar v'nichnesu dagim. So now the meat is free, but the fruits become shvius. It's a little confusing, but the basic rule is that the original item which has kedusha shvius retains its status no matter what, and there's one replacement. So in other words, the first purchase that I made, I paid with the fruits. The fruits are always going to retain their status. Now, what did I buy? I bought some meat. So now the meat has that status. But that meat is a product. It's like a second level. Now that I take the meat and exchange it for something else, so now the normal exchange happens. The meat goes free and the fish is the replacement. Lokach bedagim yayin. If you traded in your fish for some wine, yatsu dagim v'nichnesu yayin. So the fish goes free and the wine now becomes shvius. Lakach b'yayin shemen, you traded in wine for oil. Yatsa yayin v'nichta shemen, now the oil has the status. HaKetzad, what's the rule? Acharon nichnas b'shvius. The last item that you have left has shvius. Upri atzmo aser. And the original fruit, which a person paid with, retains its prohibition. Okay? So that's what the Bryce is bringing out with the whole scenario of different sales. That the first pre is always going to keep its status, and the last item, which I end up with, also has the same status. Okay, so fine. So that was the Bryce. Now the Gemara told me the Brisa is a raya, a support to the opinion of Rebbe Lazar. Midekatani lokach alma derech mekach in terechilul. The way the Brisa described the case of he did this and then he did this and then he did this was always in the form of a sale. So says the Gemara, if the Brisa described it, he bought this and then he bought this, then he bought this, then he bought this. It sounds like from the Brisa the way to make a transfer is by making sales. In other words, the Brisa didn't just say that a person who has fruits who said that it should be in exchange for the meat, and then the meat for the wine, then the wine for the oil. Right? It said that he went to the store and bought this, then he went and bought this, then he went and bought this. So why is the Brisa busy with sale after sale? It seems to be supporting the opinion of Rebbe Lazar that said the only way to make the transfer happen is in the form of a sale. So that's the Gemara's raya, its support, like the opinion of Rebbe Lazar. Okay. Tanya Kavasi de Rebbe Yochanan, and we have a brisa like the opinion of Rebbe Yochanan. Echad shvius ve'echad meiser sheni, mischalul and al behema chayev va'of, bein chayin bein shchut and divrei Reb Meir. The brisa says that whether you have the fruits of shvius or meiser sheni, you can make the exchange onto a behema chayev va'of, different types of animals, the domestic animal, a wild animal, or a bird. Bein chayin, bein shchuten, whether it's alive or whether it's shechte divrei Reb Meir. Chachamim omrim, the Chachamim say al shchuten mischalulin, that if it's shechted, a person could do it. Al chayin ein mischalulin, but if it's alive, a person can't. Gzeira shem yigalo mehen adarim, because there's a concern that a person might come to keep it around in order to make some money, and because these are items which a person is not allowed to keep around too long, we prohibit him from giving it the status of Meiser Sheni or Shvius, because we're concerned he's going to end up doing the wrong thing because he wants to keep it around to make money and he's not allowed to keep it around. Okay, just Rashi, the second to last Rashi on the page says Meschalolin, Mashra derech chilul b'pediya v'lo b'mekach u'memkar. Says Rashi, the word Meschalolin sound like the way he's making it happen is by mischalulin sounds like pigeon, which means he's not making a sale, he's taking his own items and transferring it. So if that's what the word mischalulin means, the Gemara is saying it's a support like the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, who says you can even make the transfer happen even without a sale. Even the person in his own house can say this should be transferred onto this. Because if mischalulin sounds like pigeon, which means there's no second party involved, the person's making it happen himself. So then it sounds like the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that it works even in such a way. Let's just see a couple more lines. Amar Rava, machlokas b'schar. Says Rava, the disagreement in the Brisa. Right, Reb Meir said that a person's allowed to make the transfer even on a live animal. The Chachamim said you can't do it on a live animal. Says Rava, the machlokas is by a male. Aval nekevus divrei hakol al shchutin mischalulin al chayin ein mischalulin. Says Rava, the whole disagreement in the Brisa was can you transfer it onto a male animal, which is alive. But a female animal, says Rava, I think everybody agrees that you're not allowed to do that. Gzeira shem yigadol mehen adarim. Because the female animal, which is the type they would keep around to produce more kids to make money, says Rava, I think both Tanoim agree that we shouldn't allow him to make the transfer onto that, because I'm concerned he's going to keep it around too long and do something wrong. The only disagreement was by scharim, by a male animal. One opinion held there's no concern, there's no reason for him to keep it around too long, let's allow him to make the transfer. The other opinion, the Chachamim said that if I don't prohibit all live animals, even a male, then people are going to get confused. So therefore, even though the real problem is to make the transfer into a female animal, I have to prohibit a male animal so that people don't get confused to allow even a female animal. Okay, we'll step over here.